Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'll make more of a formal introduction shortly. We're going to just give it 2 or 3 more minutes so that we can ensure that everybody has logged in to enjoy today's free masterclass. Okay, Oran, I think I'm going to kick us off. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elaine Kruger. I'm the Learning Solutions Manager for iLearn. And welcome to today's free masterclass on defining, designing, and embedding culture in your organization. To introduce you to our guest speaker today, his name is Oran Cohen. He is the founder and CEO of GWork, a performance and culture intelligence platform. He holds a master's in leading innovation and change and has worked with organizations such as Google, Nestle, Unilever, and WHO. And he did this to design and improve how employees would work and innovate. He has been studying and teaching psychoanalysis and behavioral psychology for the last 7 years. He has worked internationally to bring the worlds of behavioral psychology, systems thinking, and process improvement together to unlock the value of organizations. His latest initiative is GWork, taking 15 years of research and experience where he has codified culture to drive organizational efficiency. Its mission is simple: to unlock behavior to help organizational leaders to master their business. I've also had the pleasure of working with Oran, his customer excellence team, as well as his technical team over the last year, while we are in the process of integrating GWork into our organization and customizing it so that we can meet the performance and culture requirements that we intend on achieving in our business. So, Oran, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your years of experience and expertise with us.
Such a pleasure to be here. Lovely to be with everybody on the call. Today's call is going to be very interactive, so we're going to move away from talking heads and me speaking a lot to you actually working on your organization and on the culture that you're trying to drive in the organization. Elaine, can you see my screen?
I can.
Excellent. Okay. So today we're going to talk about what it means to design and embed culture into your ways of working in the organization. And I think what's important to look at during the session is, as I said, you're going to get your hands really dirty in thinking about how do you do that in the context of your organization. And so before we even jump into that, I think it's important to stop for a moment and just look at where does culture fit in the context of an organization. And so when you set up an organization, and I don't know, we work a lot with scaling organizations that are going from 50 to 300 overnight. When you set up your organization, you're focusing on your product, your value proposition, and your product market fit. You're also thinking about, okay, so how do we drive acquisition, sales, and marketing? You're thinking about customer success and how do we create an amazing experience for our customer, and you are looking at what people should we bring into the organization. And we get really good as an organization to focus on product, acquisition, customer success, and bringing in the right people. We measure the product acquisition and customer success really easily, but where we often fall short is the way by which we define, measure, manage, and improve across people and culture. Everybody can hear me clearly?
I can hear you.
Perfect. And so the key to driving this in the organization is to also bring some science to the people and the culture bit, bringing processes and culture together. So an organization that is scaling really fast, and as I said, this is really our expertise, when an organization has just set up leadership, know exactly what they want to do, they've got a direct report team, and everybody's driving the mission. But the minute you start moving from a startup to a scale up, often what happens is the thing that happens is that the cultural element starts to have a negative impact on the organization. And this is really where the wheels come off. And so we're going to run a really interactive session today. And so I want to pose to you that, first of all, I want you to reflect on, as an organization, what do you reward? So in the beginning, you start off and there is very little science to how you drive the organization and how you embed a specific culture. But what we're going to do today is we're going to start to reflect on how we show up. And so what I want you to think about is, currently, if there is a culture in place, what do you reward? What do you demonstrate? What do your leaders demonstrate? What do you accept or ignore? And what do you prioritize? So we're going to take a moment, and Lisa, I'm going to ask you to share a link on the chat for everyone to go on to what we call Menti, and you'll see that the question is there. What does your company reward, accept, ignore, and prioritize? Because that starts to reveal to you the culture by which the organization runs. Lisa, you there?
Yes, Oran, the link has been shared inside the chat.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so in the chat, I want you to think about your organization and to reflect on, as an organization, if you think about your leaders, what do your leaders reward? What do they accept? What do they ignore? And what do they prioritize? And your answers will actually show up on our screen that is being shared with you at the moment. I'll give you a moment to do that. What does your company reward, accept, ignore, and prioritize? Awesome. We've got 3 company values: excellence, empathy, and bravery. Love it. These values tie back to our rewards and awards. Fantastic. And so who said that? Maybe you can unmute. Lisa, it is possible to unmute participants, correct?
Yes, I can. I'll do so now.
Okay, great. And can you hear me clearly?
Yes, you're coming through very, very clearly.
Okay, perfect. And somebody said quality relationships, performance. So how do you reward? Maybe you can say in the chat, how do you reward performance? How do you reward quality relationships? We've got another performance, excellent. And how do you define performance is something we can look at as well. That's great. I think we've got some lovely elements here. So we're going to jump back into the presentation. And so now what I want to ask you is, based on this, how would you define what is culture? And so we're going to go back and you'll see that there we go. Wait, we've got another individual who's posted something. So what do you reward, accept, ignore, and prioritize? Reward, initiative, and our 5 company values: professionalism, respect, integrity, determination, excellence. Beautiful. What do we accept? High performance. Nice. What do we ignore? Procedures. Interesting. Okay, so Lisa, please confirm with me if we can unmute participants, because it would be lovely to have these robust conversations.
I have, but I see it's telling me attendees are self-muted. So
Okay,
I don't know
perfect.
if everyone.
Hello, I unmuted myself.
Okay, great. So who said, who put the last comment in? Reward, initiative, and our 5
Myself,
company values.
Zaino Nisa. Zaino for short.
Lovely to have you here. So
Thank you.
what do you mean you ignore procedures?
Well, when it comes to deadlines, we are in the manufacturing engineering industry.
Yes.
We tend to, for the, you'll see, prioritize sales. So obviously you want to meet that deadline, and we would sometimes have to ignore that in the actual procedures, which is very detailed in terms of pre-inspection, post-inspection, final inspection, etc. So that we can get that product or that machine out of the door to the client on time. And the repercussion of that is that you have people on site at the client having to now, to put it in layman's terms, make the machine work, because we had to meet the deadline, but the machine is out, but it's not properly tested according to our specific procedures. And so now we have a poor oak on site trying to make it work when we should have done that here. But that's minimal, but that is something that becomes a problem.
Got it. And often what we find is that we unconsciously in our organization reward specific things as leaders, accept certain behaviors or standards. We ignore things. So for example, we might have a high performer, but that doesn't have really good teamwork capabilities and ways of working. And so this is the kind of thing that we start to explore together. And so with that in mind, I want to ask you a very simple question. In your words, in the mentee that has been shared with you, write down what is culture. Because we talk about this and we always say, I'm trying to drive my culture right now and I'm trying to understand how we improve our culture, but what is culture? So in an organization, so in your own words, I'd like you to try and answer that question. I'll give you 20 seconds for that.
Sorry, is there another link that's going to be posted? Mine is still on the previous link in Mentee.
Oh, it should have changed. Can you see it now?
Mine is still on what do you reward, accept, etc. Should I go
Okay.
to change slide? Should I click on my side, change slide?
Maybe do that, yeah. It should have done that automatically, but if it hasn't, yes, please.
Okay, I did that. Okay, I'm gonna type it.
Okay, perfect. And everyone else, we've got about 40 people on the call, so please add yours as well. And so let's see what we've got. We've got culture defines what the company and its stakeholders stand for, how things are done. Beautiful. And of course, there's that very known statement is that culture is what happens when leadership leave the room. Right? So not only what leadership put in place and reiterate, but the reality is it is what happens when leaders leave the room. It is the way we do things in the company and how we behave. Beautiful. And how we do things as an organization, how we best get along, the demonstrated values and principles that are displayed by all employees. Beautiful. Beautiful explanation. The way we do things around here, how we show up for each other, clients, stakeholders, and the environment, and living the values of the organization and how work is done. So excellent. So that's exactly the kind of thing that we are talking about. And one way to think about what culture is in the context of what we're talking about today is that culture is the accumulation of behaviors over time. So the way by which people show up on a day-to-day basis, taken over a long period of time, that is the expression of culture. Now, the challenge is that a lot of organizations don't define it, they don't measure it, they don't manage it, and they definitely find it hard to improve over time. And so what's critical to do, and what we will do today, even if you've done this in your organization to some extent, hopefully today will give you the tools to be able to take it to the next level of precision and science. What we want to do is we want to define it before it defines us. In other words, the things we unconsciously reward, unconsciously ignore, we want to start to bring awareness to that. So let's get precise by defining behaviors. So the way we're going to do that today, practically, is you're going to design and embed culture through your very own behaviors blueprint. And the way that you're going to do that is the following. We're going to unpack our values and bring them to life and understand them a little bit better. We will then define them in the context of behaviors. And then finally, we will create embedment mechanisms and feedback loops to drive that as a scientific discipline in the organization. Excellent. So let's jump in. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to unpack values. And so the first question to you is, do you have a set of values in your organization? And we're going to do a quick poll on Menti. So let me know if you see that. And please answer if you have a clearly defined set of values. As I said, we've got about 40 people on the call, and we're going to wait for everybody to answer. If you cannot see this, then please press next slide or go to next slide on the page that you're seeing right now. So some feedback is coming in, some votes coming in. We've got 13 so far, and overall we're seeing a resounding yes. That's excellent. So that's the first step. Those who said no, do not fret. The opportunity today is to start to look at how you go about defining a clear set of values in the organization. We've got 17 feedbacks so far, and we can see that overall most people have said yes, they do. Excellent. So the next question is, what are they? So what we're going to do in the chat, in the Menti, you're going to actually write down what are your company's values. Excuse the typo there. What are your company values? And so put one word. I think you're given 3 opportunities to add values, or multiple. So add your values. So we saw some of those coming through in the first slide, but let's, we've got honesty, we've got excellence, we've got bravery, we've got empathy, we've got authenticity, people centricity, beautiful, trust, respect, pride. So now I want to ask you, that's great. We got more coming in, more honesty, bravery, quality. That's a nice one. Trustworthiness, respect, trustworthy, integrity, empathy, customer first. So some organizations call it customer love. We've got more excellence, passion. What else? Determination. Beautiful. Okay, these words are really, really powerful. But the journey is to start to really understand what they mean. So we've got teamwork as well, accountability, fantastic. Okay, and we've had quite a few people respond. Okay, excellent. So now what I want you to do is take out a piece of paper, or even you can do it on the chat if that's more comfortable to you. And I want you to rate your values from top to bottom. And what does that mean? It means what you want to rate around them is what are the ones that are most visible in your organization and the ones that you feel are least visible in your organization. And then I think it would be nice to do it in the chat. So, and Lisa, I just want to confirm everyone has access to the chat and can type in there, because I'm actually not seeing specific responses at the moment or questions.
So that everyone has access and is able to type in the chat and in the question box.
Okay, perfect. So whether you do it on the chat or you do it on a piece of paper, what I want you to do is to take your 3 to 5 values. And by the way, I'd recommend that if you have more, try to compress them with leadership in a way that, because more has more, less has more impact, because people know what to focus on. Okay, so rate your values from top to bottom. And the next thing you're going to do is, now that you've rated your values from top to bottom, or maybe what we can do is I can give you about 1 minute to do that. If you're sitting, for example, I hear that 2 individuals are sitting together. So I'll give you about 1 minute to just rate your values from top to bottom.
Sorry, Oran,
Yes.
can you just post that slide again on Mentimeter where I can rate it from top to bottom?
So you're actually doing that either on the chat or on a piece of paper for yourself. Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
I'll give you 1 more minute to do that. Okay, excellent. So what I'd like to ask you is if you can put it in the chat so that we can talk about it and reflect. It'd be interesting to see. So what we often do is we define these, but we don't bring measurements to them. So we don't say, oh, we're seeing more of this and less of that. What are we going to do about it? So in the chat, if you can, share what they are. If you've done that piece, now the next thing that I'd like you to do is I'd like you to start to unpack them even more. And so you're going to take a piece of paper, and on the piece of paper, you're actually going to answer the following questions. What values do you experience often? And what are people doing that tells you that this value is strong? So reflect on that for a moment. What values do you experience often as part of the top list after you've ranked it? And what values, what are people doing that tells you this value is strong? I'll give you a moment to do that.
Still not hearing you, Oran. No, I don't know if you want to check your settings for your devices specific to your microphone. I'm going to mute and unmute you. No, still nothing. Nothing. So frustrating. No, can't hear anything. No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, here we go. There we go. We got you.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Wow. Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
Woo.
Something happened where I plugged in the mouse and all the sound disappeared. Right.
Take it away.
Sorry.
Okay.
We'll have to do a bit of a rerun, but I will
Yes.
carry on from where we were. So where was the last piece that everybody heard?
As far as I can recall, we were answering questions about yeah, our values.
Was it this slide? Okay, let me summarize from here.
Yeah, I think so.
So let's go 2 steps back. So what we did was we're going to do 3 steps together, and those steps are to build our behavior blueprint. 1 is we're going to unpack our values. 2 is we're going to define them in the context of behaviors. And finally, we're going to drive embedment in the organization and build mechanisms and feedback loops. Okay, and then we spoke about unpacking our values, and that the way that we unpack our values is, first of all, we need to have values. Secondly, we need to start to get precise about the current state of our values by rating our values from top to bottom around what's most visible in the way people show up and the least visible. Then from there, to start unpacking that further and say, what values do you experience often, and what are people doing that tells you this value is strong? And to actually list specific tangible behaviors that link to those values. Similarly, now look at your bottom half of your values and say, what are people not doing that they could that would make this value come to life? So what are the behaviors that would play out in the environment that would allow you to know how people are showing up? And just in general, it's very important to know, what do you want to see more of and what do you want to see less of? Okay, perfect. So that's as far as we got, and I apologize for all the technical difficulties. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move into the critical part of actually defining those values in the context of behaviors. And so we spent, a lot of you said, yes, we have values. Yes, we have integrity. We have trust on our walls. But do you know how those behaviors are coming to life? Those values are coming to life. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build our blueprint that will allow us to tangibly know whether we are living those values or not. And the way that the blueprint is going to work is the following. You're going to take your 4 or 5 core values, and my recommendation is to have less values than more. And also what's very valuable to do is to drive a specific value once a month or once a quarter. But you're going to take your 4 to 5 key values, and now you're going to think about, what are the behaviors that link to, for example, ownership and accountability? What is the behavior that is linked to innovation and growth mindset, linked to customer centricity, and linked to collaboration? And what you want to do is you want to define about 5 behaviors under each one of those. So under ownership and accountability, how do you know somebody is showing ownership and being accountable in their role across the organization? How do you know that somebody is exhibiting a growth mindset? And define that very, very clearly. And so what we're going to do together is I'm going to give you some tips on how to think about these behaviors to build your behaviors blueprint. One is, a great behavioral blueprint links your operational and business needs. In other words, the very thing the CEO and Exco is trying to drive, and link that to culture values. And so if you do this effectively, what you essentially do is that you create a seat at the table as HR. And so often we get stuck in being sort of very abstract and fluffy, as leaders sometimes like to call HR, and we don't bring enough of the operational perspective to that. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, it must be visible and granular. The way you actually write and define the behavior, the rule of thumb is simple is better. So go for observable statements, not opinions. An example, Elaine is innovative. How would we know if Elaine is innovative? Well, for example, she contributes ideas during meetings. She picks up challenges in our processes and proposes improvements. She proactively understands the needs of the customer and is able to define them. So those are examples of how Elaine, and I hope I'm not using your name in vain, Elaine, and everybody can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you, and no, you absolutely can use me as an example.
Excellent. Okay. And so what we want to do is we want to be very, very clear around those specific observable behaviors. And so the first tip was make sure that you link operational and business needs to cultural values. And secondly, it must be granular and observable in nature. And simple is better. Third, it must be scalable and applicable across departments and BUs. So what does that mean? It means it must be applicable for marketing as well as ops. It must be applicable to sales as well as customer success. And so what you want to make sure is that these behaviors are universal in the way by which you define them, but practical enough at the same time. So what I want to do is I want us to practice quickly, and I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a second because of the technical challenge that we just had, and I'm going to set up Menti again. 1 second. Oh, okay, lovely. It says GWork is currently presenting. 1 second. There we go. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Now. Okay, perfect. So we looked at what our company values. And now what I'd like us to do is I'd like us to actually practice this so that when you go back and build your behaviors blueprint, you can use a tangible example. And so what I want everybody to do in the chat is, not in the chat, in Menti, is actually write behaviors that you believe use those 3 tips around being operational and business focused, bring values, are simple, so they're not confusing in the way that you name them, that they are observable. So for example, not Elaine is innovative. Actually, let's unpack what innovativeness looks like in our organization. And so what I want you to do is to practice that by actually writing a behavior that would link under something like teamwork, collaboration, and teaming. So I'm going to give you a second to do that. And everybody can see my screen clearly?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. I'm going to give you a second to do that. Everybody still has the link? So this is the way of practicing and thinking through how do we bring our values into tangible behavioral statements. Okay, anybody on the line? Are you able to see this? Okay, I'm going to assume that because we had some technical difficulties, some individuals might have dropped off. I can still see about 30 attendees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the presentation and give you a sense of what those look like practically. Okay, perfect. So what I want you to do is start to practice the ability to take a value and create a behavior out of it. And so what that could look like is the following. Here are examples of teamwork and collaboration. Makes an effort to build and nurture trust and respect within the team. Respects others' time and effort by working smartly and efficiently. Welcomes peer feedback, takes this on board and seeks clarity on how they can change or improve accordingly. Actively celebrates team members' success and achievements through verbal or written acknowledgements. Collaborates effectively to meet the client's expectations. Considers other team members' workloads by planning sufficient lead times. Proactively communicates changes and updates to team members and clients. Avoids any biased behavior or prejudice and treats everyone at work with dignity and respect. Contributes to team spirit. Takes proactive steps to raise the team and company morale, and willingly supports others with their work when necessary, even if it is outside of the individual role. Proactively asks for support from others when they need it to meet a crucial need or deadline. Connects with their team members regularly. Ask clear and necessary questions in meetings that add clarity and value to achieve the meeting objectives. Works to achieve alignment with the team through consistent communication and collaboration on decisions. And so what you're seeing here very clearly, what are some of the trends when you look at these behaviors that pops up for you as an individual? I'm going to ask attendees. Anybody want to give it a shot? Maybe write it on chat, and Lisa, you can read it out to us. Can everybody hear me clearly?
We can.
Great. Okay, perfect. So those
Can
are
you,
the types.
Oran, can you repeat the question?
Sure. What are some of the, when you look at these behavioral statements, what are trends that you're seeing within these statements? They're simple, so they're not complicated, and they focus on observable behavior. They look at a specific element that is defined by teamwork, collaboration, and teamwork. And so and teaming. And as an organization and as leaders, people leaders in the organization, your role is to say, okay, so what are the top 5 that we should now drive in the organization to enable teamwork? And so what you'll do is you'll do the same process across all of your 4 to 5 values, as mentioned in the blueprint. And what this will allow you to do is have a concise and precise way of actually defining what good looks like, or what we like to say, what genius work looks like. And we built a library of these behaviors that we run on GWork. And when you get set up, you actually decide from this library on how you drive your values. So now we've taken some time to unpack our values. We've also taken some time to define them in the context of behaviors. Now, the last piece I want to leave with you is how do you create embedment mechanisms and feedback loops to drive this transformation in the organization? And here are some very, very simple tips. One is you have to ask yourself, are the behaviors linked to performance, and have you weighted them into the scorecard? If it is not being measured and linked to performance, it is unlikely that you will have the type of buy-in and systemic impact that you're after. Secondly, are there regular 360 assessments that reveal how each individual shows up? So have you actually started to run these as 360s that are tangible and measurable in the organization? Are managers having one-on-ones to reflect back findings and drive development? So not only are you getting that feedback from 360s, but also are managers equipped and focused on giving either monthly, bi-weekly or weekly one-on-one sessions to reflect back findings of these types of assessments to drive development into the way that individuals showing up. And embedment tip number 4, do they directly link to your rewards and recognitions to drive day-to-day behavioral embedment? So have you actually created processes that tell you from the 360 scientifically who are the people that are exhibiting these behaviors, and are you rewarding that and applauding people for that type of work? And then finally, are you leveraging technology to drive organization-wide data insights that tell you what you should do next in the organization in order to create change? What interventions should you run? What coaching programs should you roll out, etc. So everyone, that hopefully gives you a really nice understanding of what it takes to build a powerful, clear, and concise blueprint for your organization, and how to start unlocking behavior to master your business. I thank you so much for your time, and I welcome any questions if anybody wants to go off mute to get any clarity or has any questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Oran. And this was actually such a lovely refresher for me too. I love how the culture links back to performance, because ultimately it's performance that we want to drive in our organizations that impact our bottom line. And you need a fitting culture to accommodate that.
Beautifully said, Elaine.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody?
Anything anyone is finding challenging at the moment to drive this type of embedment? Any specific values that you would like to unpack with regards to how to create behaviors out of them?
I do wonder how far the majority of organizations in South Africa are from this sort of process, and how they are currently linking culture to performance, or behaviors to performance. It would
That's
be
a really
great.
great.
Yeah, it would be great to get some insight from somebody in the audience.
Yeah, what does everybody think?
Perhaps you already answered all the questions. It was very comprehensive.
I see that somebody has asked if the toolkit will be available. Yes, we will send out a link to be able to download the blueprint and the instructions on how to build it. So absolutely, yes. Excellent, everyone. Thank you for your time, and thank you so much for inviting myself and GWork onto the call, Elaine and Lisa.
Thank you so much, Oran. I know how valuable it's been for us, and it would be a crime not to share this knowledge.
Awesome.
All right, take care.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.